Hello, welcome to the England Football Channel. My name's Gary Lambert. This is going to be my first YouTube video, so it's going to be a new channel completely dedicated to the England national team. As you can see by the title of this video, this is going to be my first video and it's going to be picking our Euro 23-man squad. Going right the way through to goalkeepers, through to strikers. I think Gareth Southgate's got a fantastic opportunity. England have got a marvellous team. Some really, really good options at right back and in the middle of the park, and some tough decisions to be made if it's going to be 23. I know there's talk at the minute between the UEFA Nations League, UEFA, I believe, regarding expanding that due to COVID. But here's going to be my 23-man squad. So without further delay, here we go. Right, okay then. So, looking at the squad, it's obvious what the first three are going to be. It's going to be Pope, Pickford and Henderson. You know, even if one of them gets injured, that third choice, whoever comes in, is going to be third choice. Obviously, there's options there, though, in terms of who's starting. For me, it's got to be Pickford. You know, I know people are calling for Pope, but I don't think he did himself any favours the other night. He's not very good with his feet. I think the way Gareth Southgate wants to play and the way England want to play, it's got to be very much out of your feet. And I think Pickford's my man for me on that one. He's never let England down, and you know, when he's been wearing that shirt. I think you need to start a tournament with experience as well and be assured at the back. I don't think your first game at Euros, particularly with the group being as it is, you know, we've got to go the strongest and most experienced, and for me, Pickford starts. But yeah, very obvious. Pickford, Pope and Henderson is everybody I think agrees on, and they're the three goalkeepers. Moving into defence, so what I'm going to do, I've got a full list here. It's almost everyone is going to be in contention, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to work my way through the list, same as midfielders, same as strikers, and simply say yes or no and then sum up the sum at the end, the team at the end. So starting with Wan-Bissaka, he's one of those players who we're going to mention a lot in terms of a right back option. He's had a great season, and it sounds mental that he's not going to be in the squad. You know, that's because he isn't for me. And as far as I know, which is not a lot, but I'm pretty certain Gareth Southgate isn't going to pick him as well. I just think defensively and attackingly, he's the Goldilocks. You know, he does everything right, but there's people who do it a bit better than him on either side. But he's trustworthy, he's sound, but I just feel like the competition in that position is tremendous. As we all know, you know, it's just absolutely out of this, you know, off the wall. So Wan-Bissaka for me misses out. As does Tomori, who's the next name on my list. You know, he's again, you know, both players deserve a spot. I think they've both had a good season. I think Bissaka's had a better season, but I think with Tomori again, there's just too many people in that position. I mean, I was listening to Sky Sports the other day, and they often say that, you know, a squad is usually 8 defenders, 8 midfielders, and your 4 strikers. But you know, I'm going to go slightly different. I'm aiming for 7 defenders with 2 fullbacks on either side, so 4 fullbacks if you like, and 3 centre backs. So only 7 defenders, and for me that means Tomori misses out. As does Matt Targett, as does Ezri Konsa, Matty Cash, not for me. None of those 3 go for me, as much as they've all had good seasons, and I know there'll be fans watching this going, I can't believe you don't want to take him. But again, you know, I think England's best form of defence is attack, and that's why I think, you know, these defenders are going to miss out, and that's why I think, you know, I would only take 3 centre-backs. Mings for me, Tyrone Mings, interesting one, it'll be in a lot of people's squads, but for me, misses out. Kieran Trippier, I would say, for me, goes, and you'll see later on which defender he goes at the expense for, because as I said, I'm only taking 2 centre-backs. That means it's either, based on Wan-Bissaka already being out, it's either between Walker and then Trent Alexander-Arnold for the last spot. But for me, Kieran Trippier goes because I think he offers everything Walker does, but then the set pieces as well. So for me, Kieran Trippier goes. And in his experience in his starts, I know he's had his ban recently for betting, but that's what bans are for. Once it's done, we move on, get on with it, whatever we think of that. But for me, Kieran Trippier goes. Ben White, not for me. James Tarkowski, he's an interesting player, because going back about 12 months, there's quite a few players actually going back 12 months where they'd have had a much better shout of getting in this England squad than what they do now. But for me, Tarkowski doesn't. He misses out. Now, Reece James, for me, misses out. He's a fantastic player. I just think there's other options there, better options than him, which brings me on actually to Ben Chilwell. He would be in my squad. It wouldn't be a starter. I think most people will agree who the starter is, but he's a bit further down my list. But Ben Chilwell goes as that replacement left back. Michael Keane, not for me, doesn't go. Mason Holgate for me doesn't go. Ben Godfrey doesn't go. Trent Alexander-Arnold goes for me. So as you can assume by that, Kyle Walker, who's next on my list, is the one to miss out. I just feel with Kyle Walker, everyone thought 12 months ago anyway his England career was over. He got that red card, and I'm sure he did an interview where he even assumed it was over. And I'm not saying it should be. He's playing in the best team in the country. He's having a good season. I just feel like Trippier for his set pieces and Trent Alexander-Arnold going forward and on his day and in his youth and looking for the future. They're my reasons why Trippier and Trent go. However, I could easily have the same squad but with Walker in it. It's such a tricky option. I wouldn't criticise anybody who took Walker in replacement of either one of those two. It's the toughest call Southgate's got. But for me, it's Trippier and Trent Alexander for those reasons. Next on the list, Stones and Maguire. Enough said, move on. They're going, as we all know, both starters as well. And then it comes on to our left back, so Chilwell, as you know, I said going, but for me, Luke Shaw goes and starts. So for me, I think the back three of the back four is already starting. I think it's then between Trippier and Trent Alexander-Arnold for me, who starts to make up that back four. Chris Smalling, I want to talk about Chris Smalling a little bit because I don't watch Italian football, but I'm hearing a lot on the forums and online that he's actually had a brilliant season. But for me, it's a little bit out of sight, out of mind. English players don't traditionally play abroad, so they're not picked up on. We don't watch them as much. So for me, Smalling doesn't go. But as I've said, so I'm just looking at my list. As I've said, I'm taking 3 centre-backs. I know I've only currently said 2. For me, Aaron Creswell doesn't go. But then that brings me on to my final one. And I know this is the most controversial and probably the one that most people won't take. But for me, Conor Cody has to go. I love Conor Cody. When he had his debut for England, he just looked like he wanted to be there. Like really wanted to be there. And it felt like a childhood dream coming true. And I haven't seen that from my point of view. We've not seen that since the David Beckham. For me, someone who's proud to put that shirt on. I think he's having a fantastic season. I trust him at the back. For me, I would take Conor Cody. So summing up, so far, my keepers are Pope, Pickford, Henderson. And then my back 7 defenders I'm taking are Stones, Maguire, Shaw, Trippier, Chilwell, Cody, and Alexander-Arnold. So I'm just checking this list to make sure I've got that right. So that's my defenders. Moving on to midfield, and I know some of these guys are going to be interchangeable, same way I've got some midfielders who could be classed as forwards or attacking forwards or whatever, but starting off with midfield anyway, Saka doesn't go for me. I'll come on to it. I might mention 4 or 5 players at the end that maybe might go on a standby list or would certainly go if the squad was expanded, but in my 23, Saka doesn't go. As much as I'd want to take him, I really tried to find a place for Saka, but I just couldn't find it. Jack Grealish, hands down, go in. I know people are saying we build the team around him, but I don't agree with that. I think England shouldn't build a team around anybody, maybe apart from Harry Kane. I think we've got that many options. The beauty is don't build a team around anyone. Give ourselves that flexibility. It could be a Jack Grealish, it could be a Foden, it could be a Rashford, it could be a Sterling, it could be a Sancho. All these players. Let's not pin a. This is what England's done in the past. Oh, if this player isn't fit, we're not going to have no chance. Let's just let them go there and have fun. Don't build a team around him. Let him be free. Let him have his fun. Let him enjoy his football. And let us have options. Don't think, that we've built our team around him, so as soon as he goes off, that's it. We've got no other options. Let's Jack Grealish goes. Definitely goes. I think he goes on everybody's list. Fantastic player, and I hope he sets the world alight this summer. Russ Barclay. He's one of these players, and I think, who did I mention earlier? Just having a look. I'll come on to it, but there's a few players actually who I'll mention at some point where I feel like they haven't pushed on for England. They've been around for some time. threatening to be this world-beating player, but they've never actually progressed on. And Russ Barclay is one of those. I know when he moved to Villa, he had this amazing form, and he was playing brilliant football. But he just hasn't done enough. And there's other players in that position who I think now deserve a go. He's done all right in England shirt as well, Russ Barclay, so I can see why he would be on Southgate's radar, but for me, he doesn't go. Jayden Sancho. Now, this is the one I did have trouble with, because his statistics and his form for Dortmund, even this year, where he was saying he's not been his best, he's still been fantastic. He's an excellent footballer. He almost has the most goals and assists combined between a lot of players throughout Europe. He goes for me. He does go for me, but I can understand people's opinion in terms of him not going. He hasn't really done it in an England shirt. He seems to be lacking that flair and creativity in an England shirt, but for me, he goes. Give him a chance. We can't say he hasn't done an England shirt till he's been given the chance, really, particularly to the tournament, to see what he can do. And we'd be mad, really. We would be mad, regardless of his form. We'd be mad if we didn't take him. So for me, he goes. As does Jude Bellingham. Now, there's no way 6 months ago I'd have taken Jude Bellingham, but I just think when I've seen him in the middle of the park, even for England, he looks brilliant. And the middle of the park is where we're really lacking. You'll see I've got a position, a spot filled in my 23-man squad that is anything but certain. And I think in centre mid, it's where we're lacking depth. It's, for me, he goes. He's exciting. Let's get him. He's so young as well. Let him be our wild card pick, if you like. Every squad has one. He would be that for me. So he goes. Callum Hudson-Odoi. Now, going back to Russ Barclay, he's another player who, Callum Hudson-Odoi for England actually has had some good games. He's been exciting. I remember about 6 to 12 months ago, people were calling for him to get placed, to start. But it's a bit like Russ Barclay, where it's, again, 2 steps forwards, 1 step back. You feel like other players now deserve a chance. Other players have had more game time, better seasons. So for me, he misses out. Mason Mount goes. Fantastic player. Anyone who criticises Mount doesn't know anything about football for me. So move on. Mason Mount, fantastic player. Calvin Phillips. Now, Phillips for me doesn't go. But he would go if my other player I have in my squad isn't fit. And I think you'll know who that is. But for me, Calvin Phillips wouldn't go. We'd certainly be on the standby list, one of the key names on that. But for me, he doesn't go. Now, the next two, Harvey Barnes and James Madison, neither of those go for me. And that's hard for me to say because I think they're fantastic players. But the competition is just so tight. And there's some players in there that you don't want to take. You can't not take them. And this squad is just so unbelievable. Centre mid, around the central areas, and full back, right back in particular. We've got so much talent. And for me, those two just miss out. Particularly Madison. I love Madison. I think he's a cracking player. But I just think someone else fits within this squad a little bit better than him. And I'll come on to that in this moment. So Curtis Jones doesn't go for me. Jordan Henderson, now he goes. He is England's best central midfielder if he's fit. Let's make no mistake about this. He is England's best central midfielder by a country mile. However, as we know, he's struggling with injury. In my squad, he is in. However, if he isn't in, then through injury, Calvin Phillips would get that spot for me. But Jordan Henderson, fully fit, is in. Whether we take him or not is going to be a bit touch and go. It's a case of, is Southgate or England brave enough to take a player who, isn't as good as Jordan Henderson, but is match fit, or do we take a gamble on Jordan Henderson? Are we that desperate? Maybe we are, maybe we're not. But for me, Henderson goes if he's fit. If he doesn't, though, and I mean 100% fit, and it's touch and go. But for me, if not, it'd be Calvin Phillips. But it's a toss-up between those two. Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, the next on the list. Now, this is an interesting player because going back to when he moved to Liverpool, he started, he was unbelievable. If anyone can remember that far back, I know football fans are quite fickle, but he was on fire. He moved in central mid, and I thought, honestly, he was going to be England's answer to their central midfield problems at the time. But injuries just hold him back constantly. There's no... I think the thing is with Oxlade is even if he has run of games and he's playing brilliantly, you don't trust him to stay fit for 5 or 6 games. So for me, he doesn't go. But he's really going to disappoint me with Oxlade because he's going to be one of those players that never reaches potential for me. But I hope that's not the case. But for me, he doesn't go. Raheem Sterling, I've put him into the central, not central midfield, but in the midfield pile. He goes, obviously, one of the first names on the team sheet. He goes is almost certain to be a starter, so he goes. Phil Foden goes, absolutely fantastic. He's exciting. He's just brilliant on the ball. He's composed. He's scoring goals now. He's getting game time at City, so he goes for me. Now, this is the interesting one, because this, for me, is the person who's keeping James Madison out of the team, and that's James Ward-Prowse. And the reason why, his set pieces are phenomenal, and I like him. I just, something about him. Sometimes, as a person, you have something about a particular player that you like, and James Ward-Prowse, I love James Ward-Prowse. I think he's exciting. I think he's a good player. I think he does things. He creates opportunities. And I see. I just like him in an England shirt as well, and I think he would be my pick to go. Dele Alli, no chance. Going back again to Russ Barclay and Callum Hudson-Odoi, it's just one of those players, and I put Harvey Winks in this, and Eric Dyer, just players that were threatening not so long ago to be world beaters, and they're not. And they're just not. And they've had the chance, and there's other players now coming through, so they all three of those miss out. They're not getting enough game time anyway. The one fear is that Eric Dyer is going to make it into Southgate's squad, and I think it's a fear that most England fans have. And the reason why he's going to get in there is because he can play almost. He plays anywhere, doesn't he? Almost. That isn't a reason to take someone for me. Be brave. Put people in the position, and if we get 3 or 4 injuries, it's just bad luck. But for me, Eric Dyer shouldn't be going. If we've got 2 positions per area on the pitch, and how long's a Euros? 7-8 games. You've got to be very unlucky to have any real issues. So for me, Eric Dyer doesn't go. I don't buy this. He can play centre back and play centre mid. Well, no, let's have someone who can play centre back and centre mid and leave him at home. He doesn't deserve to be there. I think he's going to be the one that angers fans the most if he gets in. But leave it up to Southgate. Jesse Lingard, again, tricky one. For me, doesn't go. Hear me out. He's been fantastic. I know. I just feel, looking at my squad, it's just such a bunch of talented players. It's either, who do I take out? Do I take out Sancho? Do I take out Foden? Do I take out Grealish? Do I take out Bellingham? I don't want to take any of those players out. So for me, he goes. It's as simple. For me, he doesn't go. It's as simple as that. Mikel Antonio. Just a player who's just been. I just wanted to mention him really because he's just been so unlucky. He's a good player. Never really had a chance in an England shirt. It's a shame he never does. But for me, obviously, there's just better talent there, and that's the fact really. But he doesn't go. And the final midfielder, Declan Rice, he goes. And I was not a fan of Declan Rice, and I'm still not a biggest fan of Declan Rice. But I'm not stupid enough to even argue against him not going. I'm aware that we need those positions fill in. He has done a good job. So yeah, he goes. So that brings my, how many have I got there? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 midfielders, along with my 7 defenders. So those 9 are Mount, Sterling, Grealish, Henderson, Rice, Foden, Ward-Prowse, Sancho, and Bellingham. So that leaves me 3 spots. If I've got that right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Yeah, 3 spots. 3 spots for my strikers. So, as you can probably all imagine, you're screaming at me saying, well, you haven't mentioned this player, you haven't mentioned this player. So, we're going to come on to it now. So, I've got my list of strikers, or, forward players, are Ollie Watkins. Doesn't go for me. Again, he would be probably the first name on the reserve sheet for me. Doesn't go, though. Tammy Abraham doesn't go. It's weird because, if he'd have carried on his form since the beginning of the season, and his tally for the year is fantastic, but he's almost, when it comes to squad picking, most people don't remember 7-8 months ago. They remember the last couple of months, and sadly, Tammy Abraham has not been the Tammy Abraham he was at the beginning of the season. So for me, he misses out. Dominic Calvert-Lewin goes absolutely. I love Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I've loved him for a long time. I think he's a fantastic player. So glad Everton stuck with him and gave him those game times. It just shows you what can happen if someone's trusted and given a bit of time. I think I heard somewhere that someone describes him now as like a good Andy Carroll. So he's another option that we have off the bench to head of the ball. Big, powerful striker. great option to either throw up front on his own or alongside Kane, and Kane to play off him. You know, Calvert-Lewin's got to go. Just as much as almost a lot of players. For me, Calvert-Lewin has to go. Patrick Bamford, not for me. Again, it's only because, you know, competition. Mason Greenwood stays at home for me. Hasn't scored enough goals. I understand that he's a good finisher. I know he's a better finisher than probably what his goals suggest. I think he let himself down massively with the Iceland trip. I know everyone will be saying, well, Phil Foden did the same, but the difference is Phil Foden's gone on and cemented himself in a starting lineup in a title-winning team and put in good performances for England. I know Mason Greenwood hasn't had the shout-out to get called up to England, but he's not been as good for Man United since. His tally from last year has gone down. So for me, you know, he doesn't make the squad. And it's a harsh lesson. But I understand why he would be in other people's squads, but for me, he's not in mine. Marcus Rashford goes, love him, one of the best players we've got. Enough said on him, really. Wilson, for me, stays at home. Danny Ings stays at home. And you'll understand why, because I've only got one place left, and I've not yet mentioned the best player we have, and that's Harry Kane, who obviously goes. So my strikers will be Rashford, Calvert-Lewin and Kane. You know, you might want to change that about or whatever. So that brings my full team to my full 23-man squad, to Pickford, Henderson, Pope, Stones, Maguire, Shaw, Trippier, Chilwell, Cody and Alexander-Arnold. Mount, Sterling, Grealish, Henderson, Rice, Foden, Ward-Prowse, Sancho and Bellingham. And then Rashford, Calvert-Lewin and Kane. That is my 23-man squad. If we was going to have a standby list, or if we had, you know, let's say an extra 5 players. I know it's optimistic, but my extra 5 would be Kyle Walker, Saka, I think he's a brilliant player. Watkins would definitely make that list. Calvin Phillips, obviously if Henderson's fit, I would still take Calvin Phillips as a backup. And what the hell, Madison. They would be my 5 standby players for me. I'm not, you know, as you can probably tell, I'm very reluctant to take any more centre backs. Maguire never gets injured, let's be honest. Never gets injured. And I think, you know, it is what it is. I don't think whoever we brought in centre back will make much of a difference. I think at the centre back options, England aren't the strongest. So yeah, I'm reluctant to just put a name in there for the sake of it. But they would be my 5 backup players. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the description, my full squad in the description below. Like I said, this is my first video. This is an unofficial England fan channel. It's going to remain so. You know, I want to get into this because I love English football. I love international football. I am a fan who loves the international break. I really am. And I felt like I was the only one. And I'm trying to find things online. There's nothing out there. So I wanted to create this to, you know, be heavy in content on the England national team. And then that's going to be squad announcements, you know, match previews, in terms of like analysis, you know, post-match, squad, you know, predictions for results, all sorts. You know, we'll cover a whole range of things. But I really want to make a start on this, and this is my first video, so please be, you know, kind and polite. The editing might not be great, the sound might not be great, but it's my first go. But that's my 23-man squad. Come on, England, let's have you at the Euros. You know, this is definitely our time. Southgate, you're still the man for me, but let's not go too defensive. Let's go out fighting. Let's die on our sword out there in the Euros. And let's not do a Croatia where, you know, we sit back and then 2 months later we're battering them in the UEFA Nations League. You know, let's beat them there and then that night, whoever we get. Let's get a monkey off our back in beating a big team at the Euros. But looking at this squad, it's a fantastic squad. Like I said, I'd be happy if Southgate took 2 or 3 out of that and put some other ones in. The competition's that great. That's my 23-man squad. Come on, England. Let me know your comments and anything you would change in the description below. In the comments below. Thank you very much. And come on, England.